Welcome to another segment of Provocative Conversations, destined to provoke further thought and spark greater questions regarding God, church, and the religious establishments of both the past and the present. I am the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Your perception of God means everything. Part 8. Again, how you perceive God, how you conceive Him to be, how you shape and form Him in your mental faculties, how you see Him internally will be how you view people externally, how you view them internally, quietly within yourself, in your heart, in your self of selves. So it's very important, again, that you know how important it is for your perception of God to be an accurate one, to be on par, to be on point, in line with the truth of God's nature, His character. Definitely you need to understand His character. I think we somewhat in a part, most people understand His nature, at least from a intellectual perspective. But when it comes to His character, that's going to take a little hanging out with Him. You know, a person can know me intellectually. They know I'm a male. They can look at my gender or see my physical manifestations and mannerisms and see that I am a male. They can even look at my skin's complexion and tell my race. They can hear me talk and know that I'm originally from South Florida. And that I still have a great love, delight, and something lights up in me when I talk about Florida, when I go down there to visit and see nature at its best. But that doesn't mean they know me. They just know where I've been. They know what makes me tick to a certain degree. They know, based upon my skin color, they have some type of idea of my cultural upbringing, my cultural background, what my diet perhaps consists of in general. But none of that equates to them actually knowing me. They don't know my character because my character is not hidden beneath my skin or worn on the outside of my skin. It's not worn in my culture. My character is not worn in my culture. My character is not found in my diet. The me of the me is something that either God would have to reveal to you, or the intuitiveness of God or of that which is in you that makes you God-like, like God, has to reveal to you, like Jesus said to Peter. He said, Peter, buddy, flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. No, this came from something deeper, something greater. My character, it won't be revealed to you necessarily by what you see of me. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't see traits of my character, certain aspects of my character by the way that I live, by the way that I carry myself, by the way that I respond to people and things and events. But even in that, you only know me in those type situations, or Let's go even further. You only know me from that particular situation or those particular matters. You still don't actually know me. You still don't know my character, because my character is within me. It's my heart. It's what makes me me. It's that part of me that is not unveiled necessarily to you. It's that part of me that God or the God concept or that higher one is able to see beyond what the naked eye can see, beyond what the human intellect can process and ascertain or understand or accept, put a stamp of approval on. But God can do that. And I think one thing about people with God is that we don't know God's character. And your perception of God forms what you believe his character is. Now, it doesn't change the character of God. Your formation of God's character, your self-building of God's character doesn't make God who he ultimately and already and has always been. God is who he is. He is who he's always been. Whether you understand him or not doesn't really matter in the sense of it having an impact on God. But you understanding and knowing and being able to perceive him, his character, his nature, his traits, his personality, his person, that affects you. And ultimately it affects everyone around you. Because however you view God and however you picture God and however you perceive him, however you build him up to be within you is how you will look at people, how you will look at situations and circumstances and events. It will determine just how judgmental you be. It determines what you judge, when you judge, if you'll judge. It determines your ability to discern. Because your discernment, the quality of your discernment, the on-parness of your discernment is contingent upon your on-parness of God's character, his nature, his person, your perception of him. So if your perception of him is off and the character that you've erected within you of God, if that is inconsistent or not accurate, then everything else that proceeds from out of you, from the aspect of his character, from the aspect of his nature, from the aspect of that which you have inaccurately erected of him within you, will be off. Because everything lines up with your perception of God, whether you believe it or not. So if you think God is sending this one to hell or that one to hell and that one to hell and that one to heaven and maybe that one to some type of lifelong state of poverty because he or she didn't pay their tithes and offerings, well, you're going to judge those people accordingly. Why? Because like Jesus said, I only do what I see the Father do. I only do what I feel that what the Father tells me to do. So people have gotten over into, when it comes to the things that they do, they say, I'm doing this because I believe that God would have me to do this. There's a verse in the Bible that says they will persecute you and they'll think they're doing God a favor. They'll think that they're doing it for God and that God is pleased with what they're doing. And a lot of people are doing just that. They've erected this mean, distasteful God who's full of hatred and disdain and bitterness and aggression, who loves fires. He just loves it. And he loves it when it can burn at its hottest degree. And he likes to break the record of how hot it can actually get and how long it can actually burn and how many he can actually put in there who don't do it exactly like he never believed or intended they could. No, God never believed that you could do what you're trying to do and what people say you could do or should be doing. He never believed that. When I say that, that doesn't mean that there isn't growth that God is requiring of you or God would encourage you to go towards, because God is all about growth and maturity. What I'm saying is, when it comes to you getting to heaven or supposedly going to this place of hell, God is not expecting you to avoid this so-called erection of hell from man's intellect, because only in man's intellect has he erected this place of hell. God is not expecting you to have the ability to ever live holy enough, righteous enough, faithful enough, committed enough to warrant not going to that place. In fact, Paul makes arguments like saying, what, having begun in faith, having begun in grace, are you now being made perfect by the law? Are you going back to try to live by commands and threats and punishments and curses? How can you disgrace the grace of God? How do you lay aside the grace of God to now live out this unlivable world of existence, or this unlivable state of existence in a world that, as you would say, is doomed for wickedness, where the God of this world is always influencing everything? Now, I don't believe that the God of this world, referring to Satan, because that's what people are referring to, Satan, is doing all of this stuff that we say or people say he's doing, because I don't say it. I don't agree with it. I don't believe it, but I'm saying what people say. I don't agree with any of that there. How are you supposed to live in a world holy enough to warrant God's best? If that's the case, then Jesus came for nothing. He wasted his time. I hope he got some good frequent miles on that ticket he paid for it to come down here and do what he did. Because if you can be righteous on your own, then that's all he's going to get out of that whole trip of coming to this earth and living in humanity. Some frequent miles, points. Maybe he can get a hotel later on. Maybe when he returns, he won't have to pay so much for the ticket when he comes back on the second round, this so-called second round. All right, we're moving on. Don't get mad. Remember, honestly, I don't believe in it, but since most people who believe in this devil do believe in it, I'll say it. Ain't nobody mad but the devil. So, as long as a person is walking in the dimension and operating at the level of love that they possess revelatory knowledge of, their walk in love is no less of a walk of love or operation in love than a person who has and is walking and operating in a vast revelation of God's love. For both are walking and operating in love to the degree that they are able to. In other words, no one person is walking necessarily in more love than another person. Now, you can be walking in a greater dimension of love. You can be walking in the path of love for a longer period of time in a matter that many people won't be able to walk in love in that situation. Say, like if your child was killed by some hit and run driver, depending on where you are with God and how you see God and what your perception of God is, how you perceive God in matters like that, how you perceive that God perceives people in situations like that, you can actually walk that situation out in a loving manner, depending on where your dimensional walk, your revelation of who God is, his character, his nature, his personality. You can actually use that to your advantage and get through that situation. Or you can fare better than some who have not progressed to the level that you are. And they aren't able to walk in that. They'll go through that same situation, and 1 minute they'll hate the person and they want to find them and kill them. Another minute they want that person to receive the electric chair. Another minute they're saying, okay, I leave it in God's hand and I'll let God judge it. And then the next minute they're mad again and they're wondering where that person is. And God, when are you going to bring judgment down on that person? When are you going to reveal that person so the law can take them in their hands and give them that the law to the greatest extent? I want to see that person suffer like I suffer. It's not that you have more love than that person, or that person has less love than you. It's just that that person may not be to the level of maturity that you are. So that person, their level of maturity has to do with their level of revelation, more than likely, how much they know or how much they actually don't know regarding God, regarding his character, his nature. Their dimension in love is lacking. They don't have depth in that. The love is there because his love is just poured out in our hearts, the Bible says. I think that's Romans 5:5. It's just poured out in us. But how much you and I are able to call up and utilize at any given time is going to be dependent upon our revelation of that love, how much we know about that love, how mature we are in walking in and walking out our situations and circumstances in that love, with that love. But as long as I'm walking in the degree of love that I have revelation of, and as long as you're walking and operating in the degree of the revelation of God's love that you possess, then we're both operating in love to the degree that we're able to. And technically that's all God is requiring of us. So you may only be able to do it for 10 minutes, and I may be able to do it for an hour. You may be able to do it in 4 situations. I may only be able to do it in 3. Now, just because you and I have the love of God poured out in us doesn't mean that we just automatically operate in that thing in that manner, especially not intellectually. And then just because we possess it and we possess intellect regarding that does not mean that we will continuously, unceasingly walk in that love, because you have a lot of other variables that will get over into other topics and stuff that I'm not ready to get over into yet, because you do have patience and you have long suffering, you have perseverance, you have endurance, you have joy. You have to deal with joy. You have to deal with meekness, humility. You have to learn how to be humble. You have to lay aside your pride, to remember that vengeance is mine, says the Lord. There's a lot of other things. Forgiveness, being merciful, always having mercy in judgment, because God says he'll always have mercy and judgment. So whenever you judge somebody, you judge a matter, you got to put forth mercy there as well. So there's a lot of other variables that go on in that with that. You know, it all depends on where you are in your anger, because you got to deal with anger, the bitterness, the rage, all of that takes place too. When it comes to something like, say, road rage, or I kind of almost hate that term, road rage. You know, I see it for the most part as being human interaction. That's just another type of human interaction. Humans interacting with one another at different points and periods in their life. The way that some people are able to just cut you off and not think a thing about it and run you off the road and keep going. And then they'll get nasty and they'll call themselves getting on the phone to call the police on you. Silly, you ran me off. You started the situation. In those type situations, this may catch you off guard. You know, there is a verse in the Bible that say, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, of course, I don't believe in this devil factor, and I'll get on that some other time soon. But be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, he walks around like a lurking lion, seeking whom he may devour. Basically, humanity is always walking up and down, because people are always around somewhere. They're going up and down, and you're going to run into the devil. You're going to run into the human mindset. You're going to run into human behavior. You're going to run into traps and snares that human beings concoct, whether purposely or ignorantly or just carelessly, however you want to put it, negligently. These things happen. You have to be vigilant. You have to be on your P's and Q's. You have to always be looking, because things happen, and sometimes things take you off of your stand, take you off guard. And before you know it, you act out of your humanity. Does that make you less loving than the next man? Now you have less love? No, it doesn't mean that you have less love. You know, there are variables in these things. So when we talk about this love factor and your perception of God, you can have the proper perception of God and still run into an issue. And that's something I'll talk about as I continue to go. It'll be like a sidebar message of some sort throughout, whatever the subject is, that I'll hit on here and there. In Mark chapter 12, verses 42 through 44, it says, then, this is in the King James Version of Mark 12, verses 42 through 44. It says, then one poor woman came and threw in 2 mites, which makes a quadrans. So Jesus called his disciples to himself and said to them, assuredly I say to you that this poor woman has put in more than all those who have given to the treasury. So she put in the small amount that she had, but then other people who had more than what she had, and they put in more than what she did. He said, this poor woman has put in more than all those who have given to the treasury. For they all put in out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty put in all that she had, her whole livelihood. Jesus said, right there, he said, you don't measure what a person does based upon what they do. And that's how churches, that's how religious organizations measure people and their importance. That's how you end up making it on the board. That's how you become a head deacon. That's how a head demon. That's how you become a preacher or a jive time reacher. That's how you do it. You give more money. You want to get on a board, you want to have a say-so in the church, put in a certain amount of money. Well, they'll make sure they give you something to keep you because they want to have that money flowing in on a continuous basis if possible, and they'll put you on something. They'll reward you. But Jesus said that's not how you reward someone. It's not based upon what they give. It's based upon how much they have versus how much they give. When they give out of their abundance, it doesn't hurt them. It's not pulling from them It's like they're just giving off of their interest, the interest they accrue every month from their checking and banking savings accounts and whatever other annuities or stocks or bonds, whatever. But he said this woman, she gave more than they did because she gave out of her poverty. And she put all that she had in there. Now, all that she had did not equal all that they put in. All that she had and put in didn't equal all that they had, and it definitely didn't equal all that they put in. They didn't put in all that they had. They put in an abundance, but they put in an abundance because they have an abundance. She put in all that she possessed. Her whole livelihood, it said. She gave it all to him. So there's a difference in how much. It doesn't mean that, say, when it comes to love, as long as God only expects you to operate in the degree of love that you possess. God is never expecting you to give that which you are unable to give. God only requires of you to give that which you possess and that which he moves you and puts on your heart to give. Not some jack-legged preacher trying to tell you to give all you got, but from what God personally tells you, gives you a conviction of doing. You got to be careful that you don't get caught up on music, and you don't get caught up on the money lines, and you don't get caught up on the pride of giving and making yourself stand up in front of the church and look good and look grand because you're able to give more than this other person, and then you're congratulated and you're given this red carpet experience, and these other people who aren't as fortunate as you to have what you possess are treated as fourth-class citizens in the church of God. That's kind of messed up, but that is the reality of it all. God is only requiring of you to give that which you are able to give. So some people aren't able to give as much as others are able to give because they don't possess the proper degree of revelation of God and his love and his person and his character and his nature. It doesn't mean that they don't possess all that you possess. It just means that they aren't able to give out of that which they don't have access to. God is only requiring of people to give out of that which they have access to give. Now, even though your maturity level allows you to be more expressive and more consistent in your love walk than someone else, it doesn't mean that you possess more love than that other person does. It may just mean that you are conscious and therefore qualified enough to walk in a greater dimension of your revelation of God than they are. It doesn't make you better. Doesn't make you gooder. It just means that because of your maturity level, because things have, they say fine wine gets better over time. Well, the things of God, as time progresses, you tend to, if you are in a progressive state or stage or in progressive stages of living, the more progressive stages of your life in living, then you will produce more with what you have than other people. Your maturity level brings that higher productivity level, and you therefore are able to express more consistently the type love and to walk in the level of love on a daily basis and in almost every situation than other people. But it doesn't mean that you possess more love than the other person does. It may just mean that you're just conscious of what you possess, and you're conscious of your maturity level, and you're conscious of the nature and quality of God's character, and you're able to walk in a greater dimension in it. And Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 17 in the New King James Version, it says like this. It says, "Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you." You only give, God only expects you to give according to that which he has placed in you to give. But even in that, God is not expecting from you that which you have not matured to the level to give. Now, that does not mean that so that you don't have to give more and so that you don't have to show more of the character and nature of God, and so that you don't have to delve deeper into how you perceive God or a more accurate perception of God, knowing that it means everything and it affects everything. It doesn't mean that you now just sit around and do nothing. You're always striving to do better. The Bible says grow in the grace and the knowledge of God. You want to grow in the things of God. You want to mature. You want to get out that state of just sucking on bottles and drinking milk. You want to move on into the deeper spiritual matters in God. You want to be on strong meat. You want to be seen as a mature person in God. So every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. You give according to what you're able. Everybody isn't able to do these things. Everyone isn't there yet. And we have to be careful that we're not working out of our own fleshly desires, and we're walking out of sync with God's spirit, and we're trying to put people in check and trying to get them to do and to express the character and nature of God that they've yet had time and place and process through experience, divine experiences, to even operate on that level in their daily walk and behavior patterns. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 12, it says it like this: for if there is first a willing mind, that's something that people have lost in the church world, a willing mind. The church world squeezes what they want out you. Religion squeezes what it wants out you. And then it always laces its squeezings with the hell factor. God's going to get you. You will be cursed. Cursed will you be when you go in. Cursed will you be when you go out. Cursed will you be in the country. Cursed will you be in the city. Cursed will you be in the field, for be in the streets. Cursed, your cars will be cursed, your house will be cursed, your clothes will be cursed, your children will be cursed. Everything is cursed. For if there is first a willing mind, it is accepted according to what one has, and not according to what he does not have. God accepts what you have, and that's what happened with that woman up there in Mark chapter 12. He accepted what she had, not according to what she doesn't have. He accepted what she had. See, this is why it's so important to understand God's character and nature, because we would have looked at those people giving and we would have said, these people love more because they gave more. Not so, buddy. Your Bible says it's accepted according to what she has and what she was willing to give and what she actually gave. And she did it out of a willing mind, not according to what she did not have. In the New Living Translation of 2 Corinthians 8 and 12, it says it like this: you are really eager to give. It isn't important how much you are able to give. God wants you to give what you have, not what you don't have. People aren't able to give that level of love and faith and godliness in their walk the way that you may feel or I may feel they should, because they aren't there yet. They're still processing. They're still going through their process. And God is not looking at what they're giving. He's doing it based upon their heart, where their heart is. He wants you to give what you have, not what you don't have. And if they don't have that ability yet to give it, we aren't to pressure them to that degree for them to give it. I have children, 7, And I have to make sure that I'm walking a fine line of wisdom, discipline with them, because I know their characters for the most part, and I know their upbringing. I know their weaknesses for the most part. And I'm always pushing them to better themselves. I'm always pushing them to go further and that you can do more. If they call me and say, Dad, I remember when a couple of them were in their military schooling, Army's AIT, they would call me and they'd say, well, I took a test today. They would leave it at that sometime, just right there. And I'd be like, okay, so what did you make? And they say, So what? What was it that you made? I didn't hear that. An 88. I'm like, an 88. So you left 12 points on the table, huh? So I was always pushing them to go back and get that 12 points. You get that 12 points. And 88 doesn't equal 100. 88 plus 12 does. What happened to the 100? It was there to make. You had nothing but time. Or I would say to them, they would say, I made a 92 today. And I said, yeah. Okay. So 8 points were left on the table. We'll leave that alone. Here's another question. What did the highest person make? Most of the time they would say, I don't know what the highest person made. But generally, you know what the highest person made, because that person is going to speak out. You will hear that person asking everyone, how much did you make? What did you make? So they can compare. So they'll tell on themselves, bragging rights. Or you will hear the instructor say, so-and-so made the highest score. So-and-so stand up. This is our highest score of the test this week. So I'll be like, so what was the highest score then? Oh, the highest score was a 96 and you got a 92. Why couldn't you be the high scorer? I was always pushing them, and I'm that way with my kids. Yet at the same time, I have to balance everything, because I understand that there is a teetering line between, between pushing them to do better and understanding the process. And it really takes a certain level of maturity, a certain listening, a certain ability to discern things, to discern the state of your child, the state of a person in their maturing levels. If you don't have the ability to do that, to discern a thing like that, you can wind up pushing too hard when you should be encouraging, or you will find yourself encouraging them to continue on just accepting whatever comes and just be happy that you pass. Where I was never a just be happy as you pass. When I was in college at a major university, I really believed in pushing the envelope to be the highest in the class. And on multiple occasions, I was the highest in the class, to the point that it got to the point that people would be like, well, it was so important for them to know what I made, because they set their mark on whatever I made, and they were hoping that they could outscore me. So it pushed me to always study hard for every test. I didn't want just the 100. I wanted the 100 plus the extra credit points that you can get for the bonus questions or whatever. I wanted it all. I wanted all of it. I wanted every bit of it. I didn't want to leave anything on the table. If there was supposed to be a high score to be made, I wanted to be that one. And most of the time, I was that high score person. which put me in a good position with the colleges that I attended. And it did put me on the dean's list and even the president's list on multiple occasions, because I'm all about pushing myself to the next level, better myself, not to be better than other people, but why can't I set the bar? Why can't the bar be set by me? When it came to God, I'm like, God, I want everything you got for me. I want to know it all. I want to understand you. I want to have a right perception of you. I want to be able to formulate a true picture of your character, of your nature, of your personality. I want that. Whatever revelation you have that others don't want to sit up and get, I want that. Whatever you need me to do to get to that, I want that. Daryl Coley, I'm sure Daryl Coley has died and all, but Daryl Coley had a song saying he's preparing me, called He's Preparing Me. And he's preparing me for things that I can't handle right now. And I just believe that God prepared me in those rough moments, in those rough periods, those rough years in my life, that I wouldn't have been able to handle where I am today if it wasn't for those things. And I wanted a good return on those moments, those weeks and months and years on top of years of suffering that I did or that I endured during all of that time period. I wanted a good return on God's investment in me. And whatever it took, I wanted to do it. I wanted to get there. God, if I got to suffer this much, then I want it all. If it's going to hurt this bad, then I want the hurt to be worth it. I want everything you got for me. Everything. And I want everything that others don't want. I want that too. I'm not being greedy, God. I'm just saying. Now, you'll find out that God will begin to pour so much at you until you'll get to a point like I did, and you'll be like, God, there will be some nights I say, God, I don't want no more. Whew, this is just too much. Not the trials and the situations, but just the knowledge and the flow of revelation. God, I just want to go to sleep now. I'm tired. I can't even sleep because all of this is running through my mind. That's where you should be. That's where you should strive to get to. Your perception of God means everything. Let's talk some more.